What's up, guys? We are back. Fitness Profit Multiplier. Those leads no showing on you. You had a great conversation on the phone with Mrs. Jones, and you're waiting there. You're sitting there. You're at your desk, just waiting for Mrs. Jones to walk in, all happy and giddy. Like, this lady was so motivated. She's gonna sign up today. I'm gonna sell her our best package we have. Our appointment's at 7 o'clock. 7:01. You're like, all right, maybe she's looking for parking. 7:05. All right, maybe she got stuck in traffic. 7:15, you're like, all right, she's running a little late. Now it's 7:30, and you're like, damn, she's not coming. This happens all the time. We're going to talk about today how to get those leads to show up, because that is the most important thing. You can't sell somebody who doesn't show up.
Yes.
But guys, you got to take these stories from us because we are the real deal. We've done this. We've been there before. How do you think we know all this stuff? Because that's happened to me so many times. And this is how you get to the positions that we're at. I have 2 facilities, we're at 7 figures, we have time freedom. The only way that you can get to these levels is by following the advice that we give you. So,
right.
Jimmy, let's talk about those leads showing up, man.
Yeah.
That's like the worst too. I hate that feeling when you're like, you really feel like this person was a great fit and then they don't show up. You're like, damn, what did I do?
Horrible and annoying, right? And we all deal with it. It's part of the game. You're never going to get 100% show rate. Sorry, if some guru is telling you you're going to get 100% of your leads to show, it's not true. Okay, they're not doing it. They're saying that they're doing it. They're not doing it. Guaranteed, right? Because you've been in this game long enough, right, what it really looks like. So before we jump into the ways you can improve it and all that kind of stuff, and there's a specific place that you need to start, which Anthony and I both agree on, I'm sure. We'll share that in a sec. We have to look at expectations, right? One of the things that helped me a lot in business is understanding what to expect with close rates and show rates and these kinds of things, right? Having some metrics to base things off of and looking at what all that looks like, so you have some benchmarks to hit and you have some things to base your numbers around, right? Because you're just flying by the seat of your pants and you're like, well, I should be getting 100% of these people to show up. What am I doing wrong? It's like, you may not be doing anything wrong because 100% of people are never going to show up. Never. Like, if you think about how many times you've maybe no-showed an appointment for a reason that was unexpected, car trouble, emergency, or you just didn't really feel like it was that valuable and you didn't want to show up, and so you just didn't. You made some excuse, right? Everybody's done it. People do it. So there's reasons why people do it. But what are the expectations? Okay. Well, we first have to look at lead source, because that's going to determine it a little bit. So when we look at lead source, if we have direct from website, so organic website inbound leads that are coming and searching for you, or referrals, we typically see around an 80% show rate if you're nurturing them properly, right? For the most part, okay? 20% of those people may no-show you, and then you may be able to grab them along the way to follow back up with them, okay? Those lead sources. Now, those lead sources are less scalable than digital advertising. So that's why we need a digital advertising strategy. But the digital advertising, you're going to see 50 to 60% show, right? 50 to 60%. So that means 40% of those people or so, 40 to 50% of those people are going to no-show you. So when we look at that, if we think and we're scheduling people from Facebook or from Instagram or whatever, half of those appointments that you schedule are not going to show if you're doing everything right. Okay, so keep all of that in mind when we're talking about it. Now, some gurus out there will say they get a 70% show rate. I don't know if I truly believe that. I don't know how they're basing their metrics or anything like that. But 60% is pretty damn good in terms of show rate from Facebook. So we have to look at these things and know what to expect. But it all starts with the first action. And Anthony can probably fill in that first action. He knows where I'm going with this, most
Well,
likely.
I actually want to jump in and just clarify what you're saying.
Yeah.
I was listening to something the other day, and it was like a business podcast thing, and they were talking about how much this one change that they made in the business made, and increased my monthly membership rate by X, and yeah, it felt good. The person said, but there was no data behind it. Like, this person raised their prices. Well, what was your price before? What is it now? You raised it $20, but does that mean that you went from 100 to 120? Did you go from 400 to 420? Because that's going to make a difference in everything. So I love that Jimmy just said what he said, because that is the real deal. Most of these gurus out there will, oh, this is going to work. Well, what define going to work? We can actually show you what works, because if you track the numbers in your business, okay, my closing percent, my show up percentage went from 40% to 50%. I've got better. 50% are now showing up, right? Whereas before, 40% were only showing up. You got better. You're able to track it. It's the same thing with clients. If they're not tracking their weights lifted, their macros, even for yourself, if you're not tracking those things, how do you know you're getting results? I feel better. Well, how you feel is a lie. I forgot who said that, but that was a great quote. How you feel is a lie. So I love that you just put that into perspective, and you talked about the realisticness of this. So, like, yes, we are talking about how to get your leads to show up, but technically, what does that mean? We're talking about improving your show rate. So if your show rate is currently 40%, we want to get that as high as possible. And the other thing I'm going to tack on to what you said too is there's always going to be ebbs and flows. You'll be in a rhythm sometimes and you have a higher show rate. If you're just, operating at a better thing, then sometimes life's crap happens and your show rate kind of goes down a little bit, and you're like, and then you kind of get back on track. But tracking these numbers over a long enough time horizon gives you a better idea of where you're at right now. So I just wanted to piggyback on what you said, man, because that was genius. And thank you for clarifying that, because I definitely don't. One of the things that I think I do in my fitness business, and I want to do here as well on this business that we're growing, is no gimmicks, no bullshit, no fluff. Like, I don't want any of our coaching clients to be like, well, I feel this. Well, what does the data tell you? And Jimmy's a good reminder of that for me sometimes, man, because sometimes I'll complain to him about something, because again, we deal with client issues the same way you guys do. And I'll be bitching about something. He's like, well, what do the numbers say? And I hate that response sometimes, because I'm just like, dude, I just want to bitch. I just want to bitch about this. And you're like, well, what do the numbers say? But it's the best way to run your business. It really is. It truly, truly is. Same thing. If you want to focus on making more money, what's the first thing that you should be doing? Looking at your bank account. What's going in, what's going out, and not scrolling through Instagram. So right. I just wanted to piggyback on what you said, man. So I forgot what you wanted me to say, but I just wanted to jump on that.
100%. I mean, and the reason why I mention that all the time, and we talk about numbers and we talk about percentages and all these things, is because when I was new in business, gurus would tell me, do this to improve X. And I'm like, improve it by how much? What are the data that you have? Like Anthony's talking about. But a lot of these gurus out there have no data, zero data. They just say, this is an idea. This is a psychology thing. This is a da-da-da-da-da. And I'm like, but what's the data? Like, tell me how this improved your business. What cash value was this worth? Like, what money exchange was different by doing this? Because why am I going to spend the effort doing it if there's not a measurable change in my business from doing it, right? And that's why we want to tell you guys what to expect, what to shoot for. If you're not there, what you need to do to get there. And then when you hire us, that's when we diagnose and fix those things and tell you what action steps to take to actually get improvement, as opposed to, here's an idea, it's non-tested, it's something I just thought of, a marketing idea that you're just going to try because I just want you to try it because I'm your coach. It's like, no. That's not how it works. It's like, we saw a measurable change in this metric by doing this with our businesses. This is why we're at the place that we're at. So do this. That's what we're trying to give you. So that being said, The first step in improving your show rate is the first step, which is the phone call. The phone call, right?
The
And
most important part of it all. The most
most
important
important.
part of it all. It really is. If you, I can't even begin to express how important the phone call is. I mean, the phone call, this is the first, they say don't judge a book by its cover. The phone call is the cover. Right?
Yep.
I mean, yes, you could argue kind of like your website or wherever they came from was like the real cover, but this is the first time they're actually getting to interact with you. Um, guys, I'm laughing because Jimmy's girlfriend's crawling around in the background, and all I see is just a blue hoodie crawling back and forth. So it's distracting. But anyway, the phone call is the most important part of this all, and it's the first time that they get to interact with you, right? So if you sound like, I don't want to say idiot because that's like a really bad word, like uh, um, a bum. If you sound like a bum on the phone and you just don't sound professional and you sound like not polished, they're not going to trust you. And if they don't trust you, they're not going to come in. Like how many times have you guys called a business? And listen, I'm sure this happened to all of us. You got some issues going on at your house or the gym, and you need like a plumber or a painter, and you call them and they're like, oh, this guy was stupid. What an idiot that person was. Like, I'm not doing business with them. Like, how many times has that happened to you guys? And we're remorse to think that people don't do that to us. You know how many times people have probably spoken to me on the phone and said, oh, look, this dumb Guido on the phone because my accent. Like how many times that must have happened? This stupid kid from Brooklyn. I mean, I'm sure it happens, right? But it's part of it. But if I sound polished and I have the answer to their question and I can answer everything and make them feel comfortable and come in, they're going to come in. They're going to show up. So, it's that I can't even begin to express how important it is. That's why we drill the phone call with all of our coaching clients constantly, because that is the first thing that they interact with.
I'm sorry, the Brooklyn accent thing. So, all right, we got to take a comedy break here real quick. So, you've seen 40-Year-Old Virgin, right?
Yeah, of course.
So there's this scene where there's like an Indian guy that works for him,
Yeah.
and at the tech shop, and he's like, there's a lot of like racist stuff that jokes that happen in that. So it's probably not PC nowadays in that movie. But there's this Indian guy, and it's like he's talking to him about his heritage and like making fun of him, and the Indian guy just goes, "This is a Brooklyn accent. This is a Brooklyn accent," and he quite obviously has an Indian accent, and it's just, that just reminded me of that. It's like it's Brooklyn. That's funny. So anyway,
yep, my heavy Brooklyn accent, but I could talk that about. I'll take that to the bank every day, man. I was a poor kid in Brooklyn. I am no longer a poor kid in Brooklyn, guys. So
not at all.
Say what you must.
Yes, and yes, and I was a poor kid in a rich town, right? And ended up opening my business in that rich town. So the offshoot, but if you're a poor kid right now, or you're just trying to bootstrap it and get it going, it doesn't have to be that way forever. And there's tools, tips, and tricks to get to a point where you're no longer a poor person, because we both were, right? So we get it. So
we should actually tell that story, man. As a side note, we should really tell our stories, because I think that'll be inspirational to most people. Because being poor and being in the position we are now, really like unbelievable. Like I still pinch myself. Sometimes I still pinch myself. Like, Jesus, I did this.
Yeah,
And
pretty crazy.
it's so funny, because when you are poor and you have nothing, and then you think about like I still have a hard time spending money.
Oh yeah,
I really do. I have a hard time spending money now, and my wife tells me it's a problem, and it probably is, and I probably should go talk to somebody about that. But I just can't help it, because it's just in my roots, like to not. But I'm content with life. So whatever, neither here nor there. But let's talk about leads, man. How do they get them to show up?
Yeah. So the phone call is the most important thing. Train your staff on how to do that phone call properly, right? So your staff needs to be trained up on how to sound proper on the phone call, using a framework that you build, but making it conversational. One of the rules that we have at our facilities is that phone call needs to be a minimum of 10 minutes, ideally 15. So we get our staff to actually watch the clock, and they don't say, "You sound like a good fit for this program, let's invite you in for a consult," until they get to that 10-minute mark, right? So you got to start building rapport. You got to have that conversation. You got to have a framework. If you don't have a framework built out for it, we can help you build one. Okay. We can get on the phone and help you build one that's customized to you, that feels good for you, that covers all the bases, right? We have some examples that we can share with you, but for the most part, we want you to build it out in your own way because this is your business, not ours. So we want to get on the phone and talk about it. So that's step number one. And even before that, step number 0, I would say, have an automated follow-up sequence that emails them and texts them immediately after form submission so that they know they get a confirmation of form submission. That additional confirmation of form submission allows them to know that it's a real business. And it's funny that I have to say this because so many people don't do it, right? So many people just get leads and don't even call them. Like they just trust that their automation is going to book them. Like belly to belly business means get as close to belly as you can early, as early as possible. So what's the most belly to belly thing? Sitting and talking with somebody. The next one, farther away from that, a phone call. Next, farther away from that, a text. Farther away from that, an email. Farther away from that, snail mail, right? So we look at these ways of communicating and we want to get them as close to in front of us as possible. Anthony does things on Zoom, which is kind of in between in-person and phone, right? But we look at this and we go, how do we get them there as quick as possible? And how does that person sound on the phone, right? So that phone call, how well it goes is going to determine a lot of if that person feels comfortable, knows, likes, and trusts the person they're talking to, wants to do business with you, and actually shows up for the appointment, right? And there's some psychology things you can use on the phone to get them to show. We're not going to dive so deep into that because we want to dive into what happens after you book the appointment to get them to show. And Anthony has a little bit better of a follow-up sequence than I do, I believe, for that. But we have set up reminders automated to ping them to get them to confirm that appointment over time. Now, you don't want to book somebody too far out. That's another rule, right? 48 hours is ideal, right? It could be 3 days, right? We could push it a little bit more. But if you're booking them 5 days out, the likelihood of them showing up is pretty low, right? So you want to book them 2 to 3 days out from the call is another factor, and then have reminders set up. We like 24 hours, 4 hours, half an hour. Reminders, right? That are set to stop on reply. So if they reply to any of those reminders saying yes, or saying I need to reschedule, then it stops it stops hitting them. And you can add some value and stuff in there, like some things that are specific to them and that kind of thing. And Anthony can touch a little more on that. But you need to have an automated system in place to follow up with this lead once they book to make sure they show.
Yeah, and I agree. You need to have all that in place. And we have a whole elaborate system that we built out for that. But it doesn't matter if the call doesn't go well.
Right.
Because even if you think it goes well, they're not going to show. So the phone call is the most important part. Like, I think it's even more. You could do nothing after that. If the phone call is crisp and really, really good, and you turn that person from a very, very cold lead to what I say drooling, like they're drooling to come in, like they need this solution, doesn't matter what you do in between, they'll show up. You should have all those things. You should definitely send them a text after and automations and all this stuff to make sure they're going to show up, right? To prompt them, to remind them because they're busy. But if you took somebody who was really cold and they stayed really cold, they're not going to show up. So the phone call is probably, to me, that's way more important than doing anything else after that. And like Jimmy said, I mean, we can go down that rabbit hole of what to do after they book. But if you guys aren't recording your phone calls, and our software that we have does that, records all the phone calls, record every phone call, listen to them, play them back. It's monotonous, it's boring, but it makes such a difference because you can tell what you're doing wrong. Oh, I should have said this here. I'm going to insert this into the script. My inflection went down here. My tone was not good. All those things make a huge difference. And if you can become robotic at your framework, then you're winning. Because then if you can become robotic and anything can go on around you, So so when I was really, really doing all the sales and I was really hammering them and I was, at the pinnacle of my sales, career, whatever you want to call it, in my gym, I was I sounded like a robot in the sense like every phone call, if you listen to them, the same. My tone was the same. Didn't matter where I was because people would call the gym line. I'd be in the car. I'd pull over and I'd take notes the same way I normally do. I have a notebook in my car. I'd pull the notebook out. I'd take the notes. I'd go through my script. I would be driving and just pull over and do it. It's funny because one time I didn't have paper and I had a box in my car and I had I have actually a picture of this and I wrote all the notes on the box. But the point is that you want to become so monotonous with it. Like you should be able to be repeating over and over the same lines. Don't change something if it's not, if it's not broke, don't fix it. Don't go in there and try to say the same experience every time because that type of consistency is going to lead you to be better. And this is why we talk about having a framework all the time and how important that is.
100%.
So yeah, I would just say it's really the phone call, like just drilling the phone call. I mean, there's nothing else to it. You can do all the magic you want after that, follow up this, that, call them again. Hey, send them a selfie video and all this stuff. If you were a jerk off on the phone to them and they thought you were a jerk off, but you're sending them a selfie video of you, they're like, this jerk off. They're just going to keep saying it, right? It doesn't change anything. But if you were an authority to them, if you really help them and you turn them from ice cold to drooling, they're going to be like, wow, this person really cares.
Mm-hmm.
But if you didn't do that during the phone call, nothing. And people try to
call,
avoid the phone call, actually. That's one of the other things, too. I've seen a lot of gym owners try to get them to come straight into the gym. Call them up. Get them comfortable. They're going to show up if you call them up and speak to them like a human being.
And the only people that may work with are referrals or maybe direct website leads can kind of work with those people. You can kind of just sell those people through email and get them to come in, that kind of thing. I'm not telling you to do that because it's not the best way to do it because you're missing out on that extra couple percentage points, but like 10 to 20% more of those direct to website people that would not come in because you didn't do the phone call, right? So it can work, but the phone call is like when you're dating, right? And you're going out, you're meeting women, this kind of stuff, whatever it is, or guys, right? The phone call is like buying them the drink, right? At the bar. And the meeting is the actual date, right? To see if you want to start a relationship with that person, right? So you got to go through those steps. Going straight from, I don't know this person at all, to, hey, let's go out on a date, without building rapport and buying them a drink and getting their number and showing your charm and all this kind of stuff, does not get you nearly as far, right? You're going to get a lot of no-show dates at that point. So we want to warm this process up, and we have to connect with them on a level that's like, what have you done before? What's worked for you? What hasn't worked for you? Oh, that hasn't worked for you because you're missing this piece. And we have this piece for you. So we've helped people just like you, just like this other person, right? Sharing a story that relates to another client that you have, right? These kinds of psychological things that you're going to have to happen on the phone to get them to know, like, and trust you and believe that the product's actually going to work for them is the important part to warm them up to the meeting where you actually show them how it works, right? Don't be afraid to pick up the phone and start dialing, right? That's long and short of it.
Yep, couldn't agree more, man. So we're going to leave it at that, guys. If you guys want help on any of this, just click that link below. We got a ton of free resources in there for you guys. And from two gym owners to another listening to this, just keep at it, man. Trust me, there's days where I still like, oh, man, this is so annoying. But then there's other days where it's really worth it. So I know sometimes when the leads don't show, it sucks. But instead of playing the blame game and crying about it, go in there, listen to your sales calls, and figure out why. I sounded like shit here. I shouldn't have said this. Maybe I should have said that. Maybe I should have educated more here. Don't be so cocky and arrogant because you have a six-pack or whatever it is. Focus on them. That's the main thing. I mean, I can't begin to tell you how many gym owners I've spoken to, and they're just cocky and arrogant on the phone with me, and I can only imagine. Oh, I got on the phone with one guy, and he's like, I think people are intimidated because he didn't want to work with women. People are intimidated with me because I'm so good looking. Really, dude? Really, dude? So, it is what it is. But guys, click the resources below. Get some real help if this is what you're having struggle with. And Anthony and Jimmy, Fitness Profit Multiplier, we are out.